Don't use inhalants. Gender, male. Body weight, 150 pounds. April 3rd, 2012. My experience with inhalants was absolutely dreadful. Not only was it scary, but it is a miracle I am not dead or a vegetable. After heavily using drugs, I moved to another state and therefore lost all my connections. Feeling depressed and with no drugs to use, I turned to inhalants. Anyway, enough with the background. Here is my experience, taking place over about 2 months. Sitting around the house with nothing to do, I came across a can of butane about the size of a can of spray paint. I used one of the attachments for filling a lighter to breathe the gas in, taking straight butane, no oxygen. The experience was almost a relief at that point in time. Anything that would get me high was good at the time. Lightheadedness and an array of geometric colors began to show up. There sounded like there was a sound similar to that of an industrial fan or something of that nature coming from the air vent. In addition to that, I felt almost paralyzed, as if I was in a trance. Looking back, it was probably brain cells being fried. I continued to use for several days, and the experience slowly began to become something far more than I could have ever imagined. Over the period of a couple days, I began to feel almost as if I was in an alternate reality whenever I inhaled the butane. It was like everything around me was exactly the way it should be. I can't even explain it. Almost like looking at a picture of someone's room in a magazine and not one thing was out of place, even though my room was a disaster. This feeling of an alternate reality seemed to go hand in hand with the euphoric feeling I was experiencing. However, as my daily use continued, I began to hallucinate whenever I used. It started off with small things, sounds and small visual distortions such as red trails appearing in the air doing spirals were most common at first. Then, I started to become paranoid whenever I used. The hallucinations seemed to adapt to that paranoia, greatly intensifying it. This is where things got so messed up I can hardly describe it. Not using text anyway, I will do the best I can. As I continued to use, it started to seem like there was a dark shadow literally on the corner of my eyeball. A feeling of heaviness seemed to occupy that spot as well. I started to feel like there was a demon or something out to get me. As I continued to use, the feeling of a demon in my presence became more real. I began to feel as if this shadow was going into my eye from that dark spot. It felt wet and like it was the hottest thing I have ever felt, only it didn't burn. It truly was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. As this feeling began to get worse and stronger, a feeling of impending doom came over me at the same time. Like if I let this thing continue going into my eye, I would die a horrible death, and worse feelings would continue long after. In an attempt to eradicate that feeling, I began spinning in circles, and whatever was going into my eye began to recede. I never inhaled butane after that. However, being the dumbass I am, a few weeks later I used a different chemical, brake cleaner, and while at school at all places. While using brake cleaner in an automotive class, I got the great idea to huff that. I saturated some paper towels and pocketed them when no one was looking, and after class was over, I went into the bathroom to get high. Holding the paper towels over my mouth and nose, I began to breathe. I went back out into the hallway feeling more fucked up than I had ever been on inhalants, and that's when the deepest, scariest hallucination I've ever experienced took place. The hallway was about 100 yards in length, and full of people. Groups talking, people walking, and everyone just carrying on with whatever they were doing. Suddenly, time froze. Everything and everyone around me froze in place. Like someone had flipped a switch. Someone in front of me was leaning forward to pick something up. A person leaning on the wall was taking a drink of soda, and the bubbles were frozen in place. Scary music, sounding like something from a pipe organ, overwhelmed my ears as I tried to comprehend what had just happened. Darkness was slowly closing in from both ends of the hallway. Then, I thought I figured it out. I had died. A girl I knew came out of this frozen state. Meanwhile, time still remained frozen. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No, I just killed myself. I'm dead," I replied. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "I'm dead. Don't you understand?" I replied again. Without warning, I began to lose my balance, and all at once everything around me unfroze, as if it had never been frozen to begin with. I felt more sober and more alive than I have ever been in my entire life. It was like I was dropped into hell and just got pulled up into heaven. I realized I was indeed not dead. I realized the exact magnitude of what I had been doing to myself, and just how lucky I was to be alive. To this day, I have never used another inhalant of any kind, and never will again. I love life too much to risk death, and that is exactly what I was doing. I was on top of the world after that, with a reformed outlook on life. I hope this experience can shed some sort of light on the danger of inhalants, and how each use is the equivalent of Russian roulette. Today I am normal, alive, don't have brain damage, and count each day as a blessing. Don't use inhalants. No high in the world is worth putting your life on the line. Experiences in death dodging. Gender, female. Body weight, 170 pounds. October 9th, 2010. At the time, I was 16 years old. I had been experimenting with drugs since I had turned 14 and had dabbled with alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, robo, cocaine, mushrooms, and I assumed that huffing keyboard cleaner would just be a mediocre high, silly like a robo trip, and easy to stop. I was wrong. I discovered the can in my house one day and planned to use it that night, as my family would be gone. I put on some Animal Collective and took a huff of the cleaner. Within 10 seconds, I could feel a wave of warm numbness coming towards me. The wave surrounded my brain, filling my head with a pleasant buzzing. The buzzing spread from my brain and filled my body with a warmness that I haven't found in any drug since. My body was filling with strange pulsating vibes, a numbness that can be compared to the opposite of electric shock. I entered a void of pleasurable calmness for about 5 minutes before the high faded. I immediately missed the pulsing warmness of the drug, so I took another huff, a bigger one this time. It instantly hit my body, and I returned to the state that I had been in before. I sat in the coziest chair I could find and sat with my mouth hanging open, feeling my face. I had entered a different reality, physically the same, but emotionally foreign. My brain was flooded with psychedelic thoughts, and I experienced a handful of visuals that blew my mind. Colors and textures had completely changed, and the world around me was morphing and glowing. My body was filled with a warmness from my head to my toes, and all the while filled with a loud but comforting buzz. I continued to hit the bottle once or twice every 5 minutes, until it was so cold that I could no longer hold it. I went all the way to wrap it in a towel, just so I could continue huffing. After about an hour and a half of constantly huffing, I lost complete track of time. Time itself had left me, and I was in a completely different reality. I had been sitting and drooling on myself for a few hours. I took a huge hit, emptying the bottle. I let the high surround me and fill my body. This time, it hit me in the wrong way. I instantly saw the world around me begin to spin out of control. My body temperature rose rapidly, and I broke out in a sweat. I stumbled my way to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red, and I looked like I had been awake for days. The rest of these memories are a blur, but this is what I remember. I stared in the mirror, feeling my face. The only way I knew I was touching myself was from my reflection. I was instantly scared that I would be stuck this way, that I had been high for days and would never come down. I felt the world around me breaking down and was instantly convinced that I was going to die. I slapped myself in the face to try to bring myself down, alert myself back to reality, but I had lost all feeling. I continued to slap and punch myself until I lost faith and accepted that I was going to die. Physical sickness shot through me, and I threw up for about 20 minutes, the most violent puke session I'd have ever had. Convinced I was going to die, I filmed a video on my camcorder, stating that if I was dead the next morning, I was sorry, and that I loved everyone. I was fully convinced that I was about to die, and was ready to say my goodbyes. I called my friend to tell her what was going on, and she told me to run to the shower, turn on the cold water and stand in it until my body temperature came down. I woke up about half an hour later, as from electric shock. I was instantly brought back to reality, stinging throat, fully clothed, in the cold shower. I stumbled out, threw on a towel, and crashed. To this day, I feel an instant sickness when I'm around the smell of keyboard cleaner. The high started out great, but almost ended lethally. If I am ever going to do it again, I now know not to do more than 3 or 4 huffs, but it is not worth the risk of brain damage or death. I wish you all beautiful days ahead. Satan's scuba tanks. Gender, male. Body weight, 330 pounds. February 22nd, 2007. This stuff has a very high risk to reward ratio. Stay away from it. Here's my report of my third and final experience with this crap. I was bored last night, so I stopped by the local Mega Electronics store at around 9 p.m. and picked up a 4-pack of Perfect Duster. I got home, ripped the safety tab off of one can, took a hit, and got the euphoric rush along with the funny tunnel vision and helicopter sound distortions. My whole body tingled, especially my fingers, toes, and mouth. I also noticed my voice was really deep, like a slowed down tape recorder. Because the molecules are so heavy, it's like the opposite of helium voice. I took another couple of hits and passed in and out of consciousness for about 10 to 15 minutes. The next 15 hours or so are a blur. I can't remember anything really great happening after that first hit, but I sucked every last breath out of those 4 cans, and the only reason I stopped was the fact that I ran out. What I had been doing was lying in bed and taking a huff or two every time I woke up. This stuff is really addictive. So much that I did as much of it as I could, even though I don't remember what's so great about it. One nasty effect of this stuff is that once I was high on it and wanted another hit, I didn't hold the can up straight like I'm supposed to. This caused the contents to come out in liquid form, which is really cold. The tip and underflap of my tongue are mildly frostbitten, and it feels like I burned my mouth on really hot coffee. What parts of my tongue aren't frostbitten are covered with taste of the bitterant they put in the can, and the taste hasn't left even after brushing my teeth and rinsing with mouthwash twice. The worst side effect of this stuff is the severe nausea that comes up once the peak goes away, which made me throw up all over the floor and furniture of my bedroom. This happened about 2 or 3 hours into my little bender. I got puke all over everything in one corner of my room, and I didn't care until the next day when I ran out. I just kept huffing this crap until I ran out of it, not caring about what happened. Anyway, even though I don't know what's so great about this stuff, the thought of getting some more continues to cross my mind. My first 2 experiences with this stuff were the same, with the puking and frostbite, and I've done it again. How sick is that? I just spent 4 hours picking up half-digested nachos off the floor with a spatula, then vacuuming and steam cleaning puke residue out of the carpet and upholstery of my chair. The stench is gone, and the room looks normal again, but I'm still mildly nauseous and shivering. This stuff is pure evil. I lost a whole day of my life, and I'm surprised I'm not dead. If I wasn't such a big guy, huffing that much duster, even spread out over many hours, probably would have killed me. I strongly suggest you never use this stuff for anything other than its intended use. It's a pretty boring high, and it made me totally antisocial for a whole day. It's not worth it. I'll just get some pot next time. Pros: kinda neat for the first couple of hits. Sensory distortions like tunnel vision and helicopter noise. Short euphoric rush. Anesthetic effect. Cons: extremely addictive. Severe nausea and vomiting. Mild frostbite in the mouth. Loss of balance. Loss of consciousness. High risk of death. Life is a joke. Gender: male. Body weight: 185 pounds. April 19th, 2008. First off, I would like to say that ether really messed me up. Not just physically, but spiritually as well. What scared me the most is that I have read other ether experiences, very similar to mine. I realized that a lot of people seem to forget most of their ether experiences after they come down from the trip, as did I. But I will try my hardest to explain it in full detail. It all started in a tractor. My father is a rice farmer in Texas. I was cultivating this field when it started to get really rough in the cab of the tractor. There was a can of starter fluid in the cab by my feet that we used to start the tractor on cold mornings, and next to that was a large jack. I hit a big bump, and the jack punctured a pretty large hole in the can. I hadn't even noticed at first except for the distinct smell of fuel. At first I didn't pay any attention. You smell a lot of weird things in the cab of a tractor. For those of you who don't know, the cab of a tractor is basically airtight. So, I started to drive the tractor back to the fuel tank when I got a very fast wave of euphoria, a dream state if you will. I felt really good, and everything I looked at seemed non-existent. The radio was playing, and suddenly I felt like I was in some sort of movie. I noticed patterns in the ground. My feet started to become numb. All my limbs became surreal. After about 15 minutes of zoning in and out, just sitting there in the tractor, I started to look and focus on a fence post with the horizon in the background. I would stare at the post and my center of focus would tilt a little to the left, while everything outside of the center of focus would tilt to the right. I knew I was messed up then, but this visual hallucination so greatly amused me that I had no concern for the fact that I was just going deeper and deeper into the trip. This next part is the peak of the experience, and thus the hardest to explain, but I will try my best. While staring off, everything went black, but there were these beautiful colors right in front of my face. I was floating in place, and there were souls all around me, but their eyes were all closed. I was looking around and everyone's eyes were closed except mine. I was on this tape, and it was playing the following message. I wish everyone's life was on a tape of me saying, I don't remember what the word was, but I do remember thinking, well, goddamn, I never would have guessed the meaning of life would have been so simple. Suddenly, I got pulled from the people and tossed into oblivion. I had undoubtedly strayed to a part of the brain, or universe, man was not supposed to know of. It was like some guardian had noticed me and disposed of the awakened one. As I drifted, I started to feel regret and pain, like I didn't like the meaning of life, because it was so obvious. Deeper and deeper I drifted, then suddenly a voice came on an intercom and said, "Warning, your life will repeat in 10, 9, whoosh." I was sucked into this type of black hole with the counter still ticking in my head. 8, 7, 6. My life started to play from the beginning to end. I remembered things from my childhood. I saw visions of my family. I remembered all the times I had been a bad child. I started to curse whoever it was that had made life this way. 5, 4. My life continued to play out up until, boom, I opened my eyes and my hands were in front of my face. Everything was red and blurry, and there was this loud ringing like a dead dial tone in my head. I kicked open the cab of the tractor and jumped out. 3, 2, 1, 0. I ran down a dirt road, horrified and screaming at the top of my lungs. No, I dropped to my knees and waited for the inevitable. The dial tone faded out. Everything became clear. I took a deep breath and realized that I was still here. I gathered myself up and got to my feet. Although my knees were weak, I started to walk back to the tractor, where I found the starter fluid container busted open. I have been spiritually destroyed from this experience. Whereas I used to believe in God, Satan, heaven, and hell, I find myself totally doubting their existence. I feel as if I really did venture off. Wanna die for 5 minutes. Gender, male. Body weight, 130 pounds. April 5th, 2007. I felt most reports on Duster were fairly anecdotal. My experience varied a little from the norm, and I feel compelled to express the magnitude of the feelings as best I can. Computer Duster. Is there a more vile Inhalant out there? I am a 19-year-old with a rather dedicated drug-using hobby. I usually enjoy all types of drugs and have tried many. Apart from habitual weed smoking, I've dipped into opiates maybe half a dozen times, tripped off of DXM for solid months, eaten large quantities of Benadryl, and delved into the world of LSA. I can basically hold my brain together more or less while high. When I saw you could get high off of Computer Duster, I was instantly intrigued. The taste was sweet. My lungs felt cool temperature-wise for a second, and then numb. I held my breath for a good 10 seconds before the buzz from hell came on. Massive tinnitus struck me as my thoughts increasingly braked to a halt. I exhaled 45 seconds later, and my breath felt funny, almost like my lungs were a bottle of nail polish remover. The buzz just kept hitting harder until about a minute in, where things plateaued for a little bit. The space I was trapped in felt like hours. I thought I was dead. I felt like I was one with the universe, but in a bad way. Very sinister. I was an insignificant speck that was doomed to view the universe from afar for eons, until everything implodes on itself, at which point there will be blackness, but still a conscious mind. When I mentally hit the blackness, I kept counting to 3 and beat with my tinnitus, and feeling doomed. because the universal language of math was stunted at 3, and therefore reality was put into suspended animation. I felt out of place, almost like my soul was escaping, but the grip of life was too strong. After coming down, all I thought about was how interestingly weird the whole thing was. So I thought another hit wouldn't hurt, another huge hit. Huge mistake. Back into the void I leapt. Scared and far from my home, I vowed never to touch this gas again. It made me sick afterwards, and the symptoms after contemplation felt inseparable from nerve damage. I felt dazed, like when you get punched in the head real hard. That's the best way I could explain head buzz during the come up and calm down. The plateaus being knocked unconscious. Inhalants suck. The interesting thought pattern and insights were abolished and forgotten by what I felt as an overall toxicity. I honestly felt dead. Beware. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. New videos will be uploaded multiple times weekly. Stay safe. Catch you in the next one.